Mom, we received a call about a break-in at this address. Step away from the door. This is my house. I live here. There's no break-in. We need to verify that. Do you have it proving you live at this residence? I just got home from work. My it is inside. I'm Rebecca Martinez. I'm the district attorney for this city. Right. And I'm the mayor. Hands behind your back. You're arresting me at my own house. You're trespassing. That's a crime. Officer Kevin Harris had been with the Oakland Police Department for 9 years when he walked into a situation that would destroy his career and cost the city $4.7 million. He was 34 years old, experienced enough to verify basic facts before making arrests, but apparently convinced that a black woman couldn't possibly own a home in the Oakland Hills. One Thursday evening outside a 2-story Craftsman in a neighborhood where homes sold for over $1.2 million, he received an anonymous call about a possible burglary and decided the homeowner was the burglar. The homeowner was Rebecca Martinez, the elected district attorney of Alameda County, arriving home after a 12-hour day prosecuting cases. What Harris did next, handcuffing her on her own front porch, refusing to check any form of identification inside her house, and arresting her for trespassing at her own residence, would become the centerpiece of a federal civil rights lawsuit that exposed how a police department ignored warning signs for 9 years. Rebecca Martinez's career wasn't damaged. Kevin Harris was obliterated, and Oakland would pay $4.7 million to prove that being the city's top prosecutor offers no protection from officers who see black skin and assume criminality. A black woman in her early 40s, District Attorney Rebecca Martinez, was unlocking her front door at 7:43 p.m. on a Thursday evening, still wearing her courtroom suit, carrying her briefcase, and a bag of takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant. Her house keys were in her hand, the same keys she'd used to unlock this same door hundreds of times over the past 4 years. No break-in, no burglary, no crime, just the county's chief prosecutor coming home after a long day. But Officer Harris saw her through assumptions so absolute that he couldn't process a black woman as the homeowner of a $1.3 million house in the Oakland Hills. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. The Oakland Hills neighborhood of Montclair sits in the foothills above the city, with winding streets, mature trees, and panoramic views of the San Francisco Bay. The area developed in the early 1900s as a streetcar suburb and became one of Oakland's most desirable neighborhoods. Homes range from restored craftsman bungalows to modern construction, most valued between $900,000 and $2 million. The neighborhood is quiet, safe with some of the lowest crime rates in Oakland. Residents are professionals, tech workers who commute to San Francisco, doctors, lawyers, business executives, retired couples. The demographic is diverse but predominantly white and Asian, with a small percentage of black residents. The kind of neighborhood where people know their neighbors, where residents organize email chains about lost cats and upcoming street fairs, where the biggest complaints are about parking during community events. Medford Road, where Rebecca Martinez lived, was a tree-lined street with well-maintained homes, front yards with native plants replacing traditional lawns due to drought concerns, and sidewalks where neighbors walked dogs every evening. Number 847 was a 2-story Craftsman built in 1923, restored by the previous owners and purchased by Martinez in 2020 for $1.35 million. The house had a deep front porch, original wood siding painted sage green, and a brick pathway leading from the sidewalk to the front steps. It was 7:43 p.m. on a Thursday in October. The sun had set 20 minutes earlier. Streetlights illuminated the sidewalks. A few neighbors were visible through lit windows preparing dinner or watching television. The temperature was 64 degrees with a light breeze carrying the scent of eucalyptus from the hills. A quiet Thursday evening in a quiet neighborhood where nothing unusual ever happened. Until a 911 call changed everything. District Attorney Rebecca Martinez had been the elected District Attorney of Alameda County for 4 years. 4 years of leading an office of 142 prosecutors handling over 15,000 criminal cases annually across Oakland, Berkeley, Fremont, and 13 other cities in the county. She prosecuted violent crimes, organized crime, public corruption, and white-collar fraud. Her office's conviction rate was 88%. Her reforms had reduced wrongful convictions, implemented diversion programs for low-level offenders, and created specialized units for hate crimes and elder abuse. She testified before the California legislature on criminal justice reform. She'd trained prosecutors across the state on trial advocacy and ethics. She'd served on the California District Attorneys Association board. The legal community in the Bay Area knew her work. She'd reformed the DA's office after decades of scandal under her predecessor. She'd fired prosecutors who'd engaged in misconduct. She'd established conviction integrity units that exonerated 6 wrongfully convicted defendants in her first 3 years. She'd created community prosecution programs in high-crime neighborhoods. She'd implemented data-driven approaches to charging decisions that reduced racial disparities. She'd prosecuted police officers for excessive force when evidence supported charges. She'd held press conferences defending her decisions when politicians demanded she charge cases without sufficient evidence. She'd built a reputation for integrity that transcended politics. Martinez had graduated from UC Berkeley in 2000 with a degree in criminology, graduating summa cum laude. She'd been student body vice president, president of the Law Inc. Student Union, and recipient of the Chancellor's Public Service Award. She'd worked 2 jobs throughout college to help support her single mother and younger sister. She was the first in her family to graduate from college. She'd then attended Stanford Law School on a full scholarship, one of the few Afro-Latina students in her class. She'd excelled despite feeling isolated in an environment where few students shared her background. Law Review in her 2nd year, executive editor in her 3rd year, graduation with distinction in 2007. Her Law Review note on prosecutorial discretion in charging decisions was cited in a 9th Circuit opinion and taught in criminal procedure courses. After law school, Martinez joined the Alameda County District Attorney's Office as a deputy DA in 2007. She started in the misdemeanor division handling DUIs, petty thefts, and simple assaults. Within a year, she'd moved to felonies. Within 3 years, she was prosecuting homicides in the major crimes unit. Within 5 years, she was supervising other prosecutors. She tried 156 felony cases to verdict over 10 years with an 85% conviction rate. She'd never been sanctioned for misconduct. She'd never withheld exculpatory evidence. She'd dismissed cases when investigation revealed defendants were innocent. She'd fought to overturn her own convictions when new evidence emerged. Defense attorneys respected her because she played fair. Judges respected her because she knew the law and followed ethical rules. Victims respected her because she fought for justice without cutting corners. In 2020, Martinez ran for district attorney as a progressive reformer promising to balance accountability for violent crime with alternatives to incarceration for low-level offenses. She campaigned on ending cash bail for misdemeanors, creating mental health diversion programs, and prosecuting police misconduct. She won a contentious primary with 58% of the vote against 2 opponents. She won the general election with 64%. She became the first Black Latina district attorney in Alameda County history, and one of the few Black women DAs in California. She'd served for years, implementing every reform she'd promised. She'd reduced the jail population by 23% while maintaining public safety. She'd increased prosecution of hate crimes by 47%. She'd established a conviction integrity unit that reviewed questionable convictions and had exonerated 6 people. She'd fired 3 prosecutors for Brady violations. She'd created community advisory boards in Oakland and Berkeley to improve police-prosecutor relations. At 42 years old, she was mentioned as a potential candidate for California Attorney General or a federal appointment. Her home at 847 Medford Row represented years of work and sacrifice. She'd saved for the down payment for 6 years. She'd purchased the house in 2020 during the pandemic, when prices briefly dipped. She'd renovated the kitchen, updated the bathrooms, and refinished the original hardwood floors. She'd planted a garden in the backyard. She'd hosted neighborhood gatherings. She'd lived there for 4 years, paying her mortgage, maintaining her property, being a good neighbor. Her neighbors knew her. The couple next door, the Johnsons, had welcomed her with homemade cookies when she moved in. The family across the street, the Chens, exchanged holiday cards with her. The retired teacher to houses down, Mistress Patterson, had shared gardening advice. She was an established, known, visible member of this community. That Thursday, October 19th, had been a typical long day. Martinez had arrived at her office at 7:30 a.m. for a meeting with her executive team. She'd reviewed charging decisions on 3 major cases. She'd attended a press conference announcing indictments in a public corruption case. She'd met with victims' families in a homicide case. She'd testified at a preliminary hearing. She'd done a radio interview about her office's hate crimes prosecution efforts. She'd finally left the office at 7:15 p.m., stopped at her favorite Thai restaurant for takeout, and arrived home at 7:41 p.m. She'd parked her car in her driveway behind her house, walked around to the front through the side gate, and approached her front door with her keys in hand, her briefcase in her other hand, and a bag of pad thai balanced on top of her briefcase. She wore a navy suit, low heels, and a necklace with a small cross her grandmother had given her. She looked exactly like what she was, a professional woman coming home after a long day of work. She'd unlocked her front door and was about to step inside when a police car pulled to the curb with lights flashing. Officer Kevin Harris had been with the Oakland Police Department for 9 years. 9 years of patrol work with a complaint history that documented a clear pattern supervisors had noted but never addressed. Harris' complaints weren't random. They followed a theme. Black people in affluent neighborhoods were assumed to be criminals. His first complaint came in year 1, April 2015. A black man, James Wilson, was detained while jogging in the Rockridge neighborhood at 6 a.m. Harris stopped him, questioned him about what he was doing in that neighborhood, and demanded ID. Wilson lived in Rockridge. He'd lived there for 8 years. He was a physician at Alta Bates Summit Medical Center. Harris detained him for 18 minutes, ran his ID for warrants, and only released him after confirming he had no criminal record. Complaint sustained. Diversity training assigned. Year 2, November 2016. A black woman, Dr. Sandra Jefferson, was stopped while getting her mail from her mailbox in the Piedmont Avenue neighborhood. Harris questioned her about whether she lived at that address. Jefferson had lived there for 12 years. She was a professor at UC Berkeley. Harris demanded proof of residence. She had to produce her driver's license and a utility bill before he accepted she lived there. Complaint sustained. Cultural competency workshop required. Year 3, June 2017. A black couple, Marcus and Tanya Reed, were questioned while having a picnic in their own backyard. A neighbor had called police saying there were people in the Reeds' backyard. Harris responded and questioned the Reeds about whether they had permission to be there. They owned the house. They'd lived there for 6 years. Harris made them produce their deed before accepting they weren't trespassing on their own property. Complaint sustained. Written warning issued. Year 4, February 2018. A black teenager, Jordan Thompson, was detained while walking home from school through the Montclair neighborhood. Harris stopped him and questioned him about why he was in that neighborhood. Jordan lived in Montclair. He attended Skyline High School. He was walking home, a route he took every day. Harris detained him for 25 minutes and called his parents to verify he lived where he said he lived. Complaint sustained. Supervisor counseling conducted. Year 5, September 2019. A black attorney, David Martinez, was stopped while entering his own office building in downtown Oakland. Harris saw him using a key to enter after hours and assumed he was breaking in. Martinez owned the building. He'd owned it for 10 years. Harris made him prove ownership by producing property tax records he had in his office. Complaint sustained. Additional implicit bias training required. The pattern was unmistakable. Black people in affluent areas, in professional settings, in their own homes, all assumed to be trespassers, burglars, or people who didn't belong. Each complaint documented the same behavior. Harris seeing black people in contexts where he assumed they shouldn't be and demanding they prove their right to exist in those spaces. By year 6, Harris had 12 complaints on his record. By year 7, 14. By year 8, 17. By year 9, 19 complaints total. 15 involving assumptions that black people in affluent neighborhoods or professional settings were engaged in criminal activity. 8 sustained. 7 dismissed as judgment calls. For still under investigation. His supervisors documented the pattern in annual reviews. They noted he needed better cultural awareness. They recommended he work on implicit bias. They suggested he might benefit from assignment to different neighborhoods. But they never removed him from patrol in the areas where his bias caused problems. They never imposed meaningful discipline beyond training. They kept assigning him to affluent neighborhoods where his assumptions created constitutional violations. On the evening of October 19th, Harris was on patrol in the Montclair neighborhood. At 7:38 p.m., he received a call from dispatch about a possible burglary in progress at 847 Medford Road. The caller, who remained anonymous, reported seeing a black woman trying to break into a house. No description of actual break-in activity. No broken windows, no forced entry, just a black woman at a front door, which the caller found suspicious. Harris responded to the call. He arrived at 847 Medford Road at 7:43 p.m. and saw Rebecca Martinez unlocking her front door with her keys. He saw a black woman with keys entering a house in an affluent neighborhood. His 9-year pattern of assumptions told him this couldn't be the homeowner. He exited his patrol car and approached. Mom, we received a call about a break-in at this address. Step away from the door. Martinez turned shocked. A police officer was on her front porch. She'd just unlocked her door with her own keys. This is my house. I live here. There's no break-in. We need to verify that. Do you have it proving you live at this residence? Martinez gestured with her hands full of briefcase and takeout. I just got home from work. My ID is inside, my house and my purse. I'm Rebecca Martinez. I'm the district attorney for Alameda County. I prosecute cases in Oakland. This is my house. Right, and I'm the mayor. Hands behind your back. This is where routine becomes absurd. Harris wasn't asking to see it inside the house. He wasn't calling a supervisor. He wasn't exercising any judgment. He was proceeding to arrest based solely on his assumption that a black woman couldn't own this house. Martinez's mind raced through her options. She was a prosecutor. She knew her rights. She knew resisting would escalate the situation. But she also knew this was unconstitutional. You're arresting me at my own house. I have keys. I unlocked my front door. My mail is in my mailbox with my name on it. My car is in my driveway registered to this address. You're trespassing. That's a crime. Harris pulled out his handcuffs. This is where it becomes a constitutional violation. Harris was about to handcuff the district attorney at her own home based on an anonymous call and his assumption that black people don't live in nice houses. A neighbor, Margaret Johnson, was walking her dog past Martinez's house. Johnson lived next door at 845 Medford Road. She'd known Rebecca Martinez for 4 years. She'd been to Martinez's house for a holiday party. She'd borrowed a ladder from Martinez. She'd shared vegetables from her garden with Martinez. She saw Harris putting handcuffs on Rebecca and stopped, stunned. Johnson called out, "Officer, that's Rebecca Martinez. She lives there. She's lived there for 4 years. She's our neighbor." Harris turned briefly. "Mom, please step back. This is police business." Another neighbor, David Chen, was taking out his recycling bin across the street. Chen had lived on Medford Road for 12 years. He knew Rebecca Martinez. He'd attended neighborhood association meetings with her. He'd discussed traffic calming measures with her. He saw the confrontation and pulled out his phone recording. Martinez's voice remained controlled, but carried the authority of someone who'd prosecuted hundreds of cases. "Officer Harris, I am District Attorney Rebecca Martinez. I was elected in 2020. My office is at 1225 Fallon Street. I prosecute every felony case in this county, including cases involving Oakland police officers. This is my house. I purchased it in 2020. I have lived here for 4 years. My driver's license, my mortgage documents, my utility bills, all inside this house showing this address. Now remove those handcuffs. I don't believe you're the DA. The DA wouldn't live in a neighborhood like this. This is where bias becomes explicit." Harris just said the quiet part out loud. The district attorney wouldn't live in this neighborhood. A black woman couldn't afford, or wouldn't belong in the Oakland Hills. The assumption was clear and spoken. Johnson stepped closer, her voice sharp with outrage. "Officer, I'm Margaret Johnson. I live next door. That is absolutely Rebecca Martinez. She is the district attorney. Everyone in this neighborhood knows her. You need to stop this immediately." Chen called out from across the street, still recording. "Officer, that's Da Martinez. I've lived here for 12 years. She moved in 4 years ago. This is her house." A third neighbor, Patricia Wong, came out of her house to doors down. Wong was a retired Superior Court judge. She'd worked with Rebecca Martinez on criminal cases when Martinez was a deputy DA. She saw Harris handcuffing Rebecca and walked quickly toward them. "Officer, I'm retired Judge Patricia Wong. That is District Attorney Rebecca Martinez. I've known her for 15 years. This is her home. You are making a serious mistake." Harris hesitated. 3 neighbors, including a retired judge, all confirming the same thing. But backing down meant admitting error. Admitting error meant acknowledging his assumption was wrong. That acknowledgement wasn't coming easily. "I still need to verify through official channels." Martinez's voice rose slightly, frustration breaking through her control. "Official channels? I am the chief law enforcement officer for this county. I am your boss's boss. I decide which cases to prosecute. I work with your department every day. Call the watch commander. Call the deputy chief. Call anyone at OPD who can verify that I am exactly who I say I am. Do you think officers who refuse to believe residents at their own homes should be terminated? Drop your answer below." A patrol sergeant, Lisa Chen, arrived at 7:51 p.m. Chen was a 16-year veteran who'd worked with the DA's office on dozens of cases. She'd testified in trials Martinez had prosecuted. She knew exactly who Rebecca Martinez was. She exited her vehicle and saw Harris with handcuffs on Martinez, and her face went pale. She approached quickly. "Officer Harris, what's happening?" "Anonymous call about a burglary. Subject claims to be the DA, but can't prove residence." Chen looked at Martinez, and recognition was immediate. "That is District Attorney Martinez. I've worked with her office for years. I've testified in her trials. That's the DA." Harris' conviction finally wavered. "How do I verify?" Chen's voice was sharp with barely controlled anger. "I just verified it. I know her. These neighbors know her. Officer Harris, remove those handcuffs right now." Harris unlocked the handcuffs. Martinez rubbed her wrists where the metal had pressed into her skin. Red marks were visible. Chen turned to Martinez. "Ms. Martinez, I am so sorry. This is completely unacceptable. I'm calling the watch commander immediately." Martinez's voice was ice. "Sergeant Chen, I want the 911 call audio. I want Officer Harris's body camera footage. I want his complete personnel file including complaint history. I want a full incident report on my desk tomorrow morning. And I want to know who in this neighborhood called 911 to report that a black woman unlocking her own front door with her own keys was a burglary." Chen nodded. "You'll have everything, Ms. Martinez." Martinez looked at Harris. "Officer Harris, you just handcuffed the district attorney at her own home based on an anonymous call that I was suspicious for being black in this neighborhood. You refused to check my aid inside my house. You refused to believe 3 neighbors including a retired judge. You stated on camera that you didn't believe the DA would live in a neighborhood like this. You violated my Fourth Amendment rights. You committed false arrest. And you did all of this while claiming to do your job." Harris stood silent, finally understanding the magnitude of his error. Martinez picked up her briefcase and her bag of now cold Thai food from where she'd set them down. She looked at the growing crowd of neighbors. "Thank you all for witnessing this. Your statements will be part of the federal lawsuit I'm filing." She entered her house and closed the door. The neighbors remained outside, talking among themselves, expressing outrage. Chen was on her phone with the watch commander. Harris stood beside his patrol car, his career effectively over. Within 2 hours, David Chen's video was viral on social media. Clear footage of Harris handcuffing Rebecca Martinez on her own front porch. Clear audio of neighbors confirming her identity. Clear audio of Harris saying he didn't believe the DA would live in that neighborhood. The video was viewed millions of times. Legal commentators discussed the constitutional violations. Civil rights organizations demanded accountability. Every prosecutor organization in California issued statements of support for Martinez. The headlines were brutal. Oakland cop handcuffs district attorney at her own home. DA arrested on her front porch after anonymous caller reports black woman as suspicious. Officer with 19 complaints to Dens County's chief prosecutor. The Oakland police chief issued a public apology within 12 hours. The mayor called Martinez personally. The city attorney knew immediately this would be an expensive lawsuit. Officer Kevin Harris was placed on administrative leave at 8:47 p.m., 1 hour after the incident. The investigation that followed revealed what supervisors had documented but ignored for 9 years. District Attorney Rebecca Martinez filed a federal civil rights lawsuit 10 weeks later. The suit named Officer Kevin Harris, Sergeant Lisa Chen for arriving too late to prevent the violation, the anonymous 911 caller, who was eventually identified through investigation, and the city of Oakland. The claims were extensive. False arrest without probable cause. Unlawful detention at her own residence. Racial profiling in violation of the 4th and 14th Amendments. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Violation of civil rights under 42 U.S.C. 1983. Failure to train and supervise officers with documented patterns of racial bias. The city settled within 13 months. $4.7 million to Rebecca Martinez. Officer Kevin Harris was terminated 18 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was damning. Officer Harris handcuffed District Attorney Rebecca Martinez at her own residence despite her use of keys to unlock her door, despite her clear identification as the DA, and despite 3 neighbors including a retired judge confirming her identity and residence. Officer Harris stated on camera that he did not believe the district attorney would live in that neighborhood, revealing explicit racial bias. This incident represents the culmination of 19 complaints documenting a consistent pattern of assuming black residents in affluent areas are engaged in criminal activity. Despite multiple training interventions, Officer Harris' behavior remained unchanged. His employment is terminated immediately. Harris' name was entered into the National Decertification Index. His law enforcement career was over at 34 years old. Should officers who handcuff people at their own homes without probable cause face criminal prosecution? Let me know what you think. The Oakland Police Department faced a comprehensive review. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division investigated. The findings were damning. 19 complaints over 9 years. 15 involving assumptions about black people in affluent neighborhoods. 8 sustained. Multiple witnesses in each complaint confirming residents belonged where they were. Training interventions documented but never effective. Supervisors noting the pattern but taking no disciplinary action beyond required workshops. A system that documented racial profiling and did nothing to stop it. Federal reforms were mandated. Immediate removal from patrol for any officer with 3 sustained complaints involving racial profiling. Mandatory investigation of anonymous 911 calls reporting people as suspicious without describing actual criminal activity. Body camera footage review for all calls involving residents at their own homes. Independent civilian oversight board with authority to access complaint files. Quarterly analysis of stops by neighborhood demographics to identify officers with patterns. Automatic notification to district attorneys when officers in their jurisdiction receive racial bias complaints. Rebecca Martinez testify at an Oakland City Council hearing 5 months after the incident. The chamber was packed with residents, attorneys, and activists. Her testimony was precise and powerful. I am the district attorney of Alameda County. I was elected by the voters of this county to prosecute crimes and seek justice. I have prosecuted over 150 felony cases. I have convicted murderers, rapists, armed robbers, and corrupt officials. I know the law. I know the Constitution. I know my rights. She paused. On October 19th, I was handcuffed at my own front door by Officer Harris after I unlocked my house with my own keys. 3 neighbors confirmed I lived there. A retired Superior Court judge confirmed my identity. And Officer Harris stated on camera that he didn't believe the district attorney would live in my neighborhood. He didn't believe it because I'm black, and the neighborhood is predominantly white. Another pause. 19 complaints in 9 years. 15 involving the exact same assumption that black people in nice neighborhoods must be criminals. 8 sustained complaints with witness corroboration. And your police department's response was to send him to training workshops and put him right back on patrol in the same neighborhoods where his bias caused constitutional violations. Her voice remained measured but carried authority. The city is paying for $0.7 million. That's accountability. Officer Harris was fired. That's consequences. But money and termination don't undo being handcuffed on your own front porch while your Thai food gets cold and your neighbors watch. They don't erase the humiliation of having to prove you own your own house. They don't restore the sense of security that you should be able to come home from work without being arrested. She looked at the council members. If this can happen to me, the district attorney with the power to prosecute these officers, what happens to black homeowners without my position? What happens to black families in their backyards? What happens to black professionals in their driveways? What happens when 911 calls reporting that black people exist in white neighborhoods are treated as legitimate concerns rather than racial harassment? The chamber was silent. Should anonymous 911 calls reporting people as suspicious without describing criminal activity be flagged as potential racial profiling? Drop your answer. This wasn't about one officer's bias. This was about a system that allowed Kevin Harris to accumulate 19 complaints over 9 years documenting the exact same pattern: black people in affluent settings assumed to be criminals, and responded with nothing but training. It was about supervisors who wrote in evaluations that Harris needed cultural awareness training, who documented his pattern of stops in wealthy neighborhoods, who noted complaints from black residents, and then assigned him right back to those same neighborhoods. 19 complaints, 15 involving racial assumptions. 8 sustained with witness corroboration proving Harris was wrong. Multiple training workshops. Multiple counseling sessions. Multiple documented warnings about his pattern. And 0 meaningful consequences until he handcuffed the one person in the county with the authority to prosecute police misconduct and the platform to demand accountability. The pattern was clear. The documentation was extensive. The department's response was training that accomplished nothing. They chose protecting Harris over protecting residents. They chose documentation over discipline. They chose ignoring the pattern over addressing the bias, until Harris' assumptions targeted the district attorney on her own front porch. Kevin Harris' career is over. That's justice. The city paid for $0.7 million. That's accountability. The DOJ imposed reforms. That's oversight. But settlements and policies don't undo the constitutional violation. They don't restore dignity. They don't erase the message that black people will be questioned about their right to exist in affluent spaces, no matter their credentials or actual ownership. The real question is what changes now. Do police departments finally remove officers after 3 sustained racial profiling complaints instead of 19? Do dispatchers finally flag 911 calls reporting people as suspicious without describing crimes? Do we finally treat anonymous calls about black people existing in white neighborhoods as the racial harassment they are rather than legitimate police concerns? Because if we don't fix the systems that kept Harris on patrol despite 19 complaints, if we don't address the culture that treats black people in affluent neighborhoods as inherently suspicious, then we're just waiting for the next officer, the next anonymous caller, the next black homeowner handcuffed at their own door, the next federal lawsuit proving the pattern. Comment if you believe this should be federal law. Police departments that fail to remove officers after 3 sustained racial profiling complaints lose federal funding and face Department of Justice oversight. And if you think these stories need to be told, if you believe accountability starts with awareness and change starts with pressure, then hit that subscribe button. We're not stopping. We're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding better. We're going to keep fighting for the district attorneys, the homeowners, the families, the professionals who deserve to exist in their own homes without proving they belong. This isn't just about one officer or one prosecutor. It's about all of us and the system we're willing to accept.